Hello, and welcome back. I'm Aidan, your narrator for tonight. I'm grateful you're here. Settle in, find yourself somewhere quiet and calm, and let us step together into a world waiting in the darkness. Tonight's story is called The Hollow Mountain's Echo. It's the tale of Sable, a sound archivist in her late 40s who has devoted her life to recording the voice of an ancient mountain. Not the sounds of birds or wind, but the mountain itself, the deep groans and whispers that emanate from stone worn smooth by time. She believes the mountain speaks in a language no one has learned to understand. This is the story of one particular night, when she arrives at dusk to record what the darkness reveals, and discovers a sound she has never heard before. Before we begin, we'd love to hear from you. Where are you settling in tonight, and what draws you to stories like this? If you have ideas for worlds you'd like to visit, or themes that resonate with your own quiet moments, please share them in the comments when you wake. Your imagination shapes everything we create here. If you find these stories becoming a cherished part of your nights, our Patreon community is a warm place to land, where early releases and deeper stories await those who wish to go further. And if Terranash has become part of your journey to sleep, a simple subscription helps us continue. It's one of the greatest gifts you can offer, and it means more than words can capture. Now find a comfortable place to rest. Let your shoulders drop and allow your body to grow heavy with each slow breath. Feel your mind beginning to soften, like mist gathering on stone. With every inhale, draw in calm. With every exhale, release the weight of the day. There is nowhere else you need to be. There is only this moment and the quiet between breaths. When you're ready, let's step together into the mountain's shadow, where Sable waits in the gathering dusk, her equipment set to catch the whispers that rise from the stone, the echoes that speak in frequencies no human voice can make. The mountain waits. It has always been waiting, though Sable cannot say for what. She has climbed to its threshold 34 times in as many years, and each time it greets her with the same stillness. The air dense and cool, the stone beneath her hands ancient beyond reckoning, and somewhere deep within its chambers, a voice that speaks in frequencies older than language itself. This is not imagination. This is not the product of a lonely woman projecting consciousness onto stone. Sable knows the difference between metaphor and reality, and this voice is real. It has been the constant through every loss, every failure, every lonely year of her life. She arrives today in the last light of autumn. The season has turned at last, and with it comes that particular quality of light that belongs only to the end of things, golden and melancholy, full of both beauty and finality. The leaves below, in the forest that doesn't belong to the mountain, but grows in its shadow, are turning toward gold, toward copper, toward the colors of release and passage. Trees stand at the edge of their own transformation, preparing for winter's sleep. But here, at the altitude where Sable works, where the air grows thin, and the world becomes less forgiving, the forest cannot hold its own. Here, there are only hardy grasses, stunted shrubs, and stone. Endless stone. The feeling here is one of being at the edge of something vast, something that predates human understanding and will outlast it. This is a place of geological time, where epochs pass like seasons. The parking area is empty, as it always is. It is a small turnout carved from the roadside, barely enough space for 3 cars. Sable has never seen another car here in all 34 years. Few people come to this mountain anymore. The hiking trails are maintained by volunteers, older volunteers mostly, people like herself who come for reasons they can barely articulate when asked by friends. The viewpoints are rarely visited. The small museums that once stood proud have closed. The gift shops that once dotted the towns at the mountain's base have closed one by one, as the world found newer things to visit, different wonders to photograph. And the chamber inside the mountain, the listening room, as Sable has named it in her private journals, the chamber is known only to her. No one else knows it exists. No one else comes here to witness what the mountain has to say. This solitude is not something Sable resents. It is a privilege. She parks her car and for a moment simply sits in the quiet, letting the transition begin. This is part of the ritual, as important as any equipment check. The drive up has taken 3 hours. 3 hours of highway, and then the smaller roads that climb and curve, and eventually become little more than paths through the wilderness. The radio has been off for the last hour. Her phone, though it works out here, just barely, remains untouched in her bag. This crossing from the world of human noise to the world of stone and wind must be done carefully, with intention. She closes her eyes and listens to the sound of the engine ticking as it cools, the soft whisper of wind across the car's metal body, the call of a bird somewhere distant in the forest below. These are the sounds that mark the threshold. They say, you are arriving at a place where different laws apply. You are stepping outside of ordinary time. You are beginning a conversation that started long before you were born. When she opens her eyes, the light is already beginning to fade. The sun has moved significantly during her meditation. She unlocks the gate, an old chain-link barrier put up by the National Forest Service decades ago, so rusted now that the lock barely holds against entropy. The gate creaks as she pushes through, a sound that feels almost accusatory, as though the gate is asking what right she has to enter. No one enforces this barrier anymore. The warning signs have faded, their letters barely legible. The mountain belongs to itself, and those who come seeking it are welcome to try. She steps through, and the gate hangs open behind her, an invitation that will likely go unanswered. In 34 years, she has encountered only 5 other people on this mountain, and only 2 of them came back. She has learned not to question this solitude. It is a gift, not a burden. The walk begins as it has begun 34 times before. 2 kilometers of switchback trail, steep enough to require attention, but worn smooth enough that even in darkness, her feet find the path without searching. Her feet know this path better than her mind does. Her body remembers every step, every turn, every place where the trail flattens slightly before climbing again. The equipment bag sits heavy on her shoulders. It has grown heavier over the years, or perhaps she has only become aware of its weight as her own body has aged. 2 microphones, each with its own shock mount, systems designed to capture sound with precision and clarity that human ears alone cannot achieve. A preamp, a recorder, 12 hours of battery backup, and then another battery pack hidden in the bag, in case she needs to extend the night beyond what the original equipment allows. Headphones, expensive ones. The only luxury she allows herself, the only piece of equipment she insists on being the best quality available. A notebook, a pen that works in cold, water, trail snacks she will not eat. And this year, a new piece of equipment, a hydrophone, designed originally to record the songs of whales and the sounds of water itself. Technology borrowed from oceanographers and adapted for landlocked mountains. She has a theory, one that has grown more specific with each passing year, refined through countless nights of listening and analysis. That the mountain's voice is amplified through water channels deep within the stone, that beneath the hollow chamber lies a vast aquifer, speaking in echoes and reverberations that run through the bedrock like a second nervous system. She has read geological surveys. She has studied the maps of underground water tables. She has listened to the sound of water moving through stone on other mountains, and it is never quite the same as the sound here. The trail climbs steadily, and with each step upward, the world behind her falls away. The sounds change. The birds become fewer, their songs more tentative, as though even they acknowledge the approach to a place that does not welcome disruption. The trees grow shorter and more twisted by wind, shaped by decades of weather into forms that look almost deliberate, almost sculptural, as though the wind has been carving them into meaning. The air grows thinner, requiring her to breathe more consciously, more deliberately. Her heartbeat becomes louder in her ears. This is not climbing. This is transformation. With each step, the climber becomes part of the landscape rather than a visitor moving through it. Sable's breathing settles into a rhythm that matches her footsteps. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. This meditation, because that is what it is, though Sable would never use such a word, carries her upward and inward, carrying her into the mountain's domain. By the time she reaches the chamber, she will no longer think of herself as separate from the stone. She will be part of it as much as the stone is part of her. She has become, over 34 years, something between human and geological, something that exists in the space between consciousness and stone time. She thinks, as she climbs, about the year before this one, about the night when she heard something close to what she is seeking. It was summer then, the warmest night she has ever spent in the chamber, and the acoustic properties were different. The air moved differently. The stone seemed to amplify sounds at different frequencies, seemed to speak with a warmer voice. She had picked up something on the hydrophone that year, a pattern, a sequence, something that might have been intent. But when she played it back, analyzed it, looked at the waveforms, it resolved into nothing. Water moving through a channel, geological processes, the ordinary sounds of a living mountain. And yet she has been thinking about it all year, turning it over in her mind, wondering if she missed something crucial, wondering if the mountain was trying to say something and she simply did not have the right equipment, the right ears, the right understanding to receive it. Perhaps the mountain has been calling to her all along, and she has simply been too limited in her perception to answer. This year, she has come prepared. The new hydrophone, better batteries, a refined methodology. She has been planning this night for months, letting the anticipation build, letting her body adjust to the expectation of something extraordinary. The sun is low and orange when she reaches the entrance to the chamber. It hangs just above the western peaks, painting the sky with colors that seem impossible. Salmon and rose and mauve all bleeding together as the world begins its turn away from light. It's not a proper cave mouth, no dramatic opening, no formed entrance that announces itself. Instead, there is a crevasse, a fold in the rock face where wind and time have worn a passage inward. The crack in the stone is perhaps 2 meters wide at its widest point, and it extends upward for maybe 4 meters before the rock face closes again. From the outside, viewed from the trail, it looks like nothing. A flaw in the stone, a scar, something imperfect in an ancient face, a blemish, a failure. But from the inside, from within the stone itself, it opens into a chamber the size of a cathedral, as though the mountain has hollowed itself out specifically to create this acoustic space. Sable sets down her bag and approaches the entrance. She has done this 34 times, yet there is still a moment of hesitation, a moment of standing at the threshold and acknowledging what it means to enter. The world outside this entrance and the world inside are utterly different. There is no gradient between them, no transition zone. One step and you are in a different realm entirely. She touches the stone on either side of the entrance, a gesture of greeting and permission. The rock is warm from the day's sun, though even this warmth is cool compared to the world below. It is also rough beneath her palms, textured with the small holes and surfaces that wind and water have carved over eons. She runs her hands across the stone's surface, and for a moment she feels connected to the vast age of this place. Her own life, 49 years, seems impossibly brief against the time that stone contains. What is a human lifetime against the lifetime of rock? A mayfly, a shadow, a moment barely worth measuring. And yet this mountain has waited for her. This stone has called to her year after year, drawing her back, drawing her deeper into its conversation. Then she picks up her bag and steps inside. The light changes immediately. What was golden outside becomes blue-grey, becomes shadow. Her eyes adjust slowly. As they do, the space above her seems to grow larger, deeper, more impossibly vast. She has named this place the Listening Room, though she keeps that name only in her private notebooks. The chamber is perhaps 30 meters deep. She has measured it, though the measurements were difficult, with walls that curve upward in a shape that seems almost deliberate, as though the mountains sculpted it specifically as a space for sound to gather and amplify, as though the mountain had a purpose in mind. When she first discovered it 20 years ago, she was younger then, with steadier hands and better knees. She had been struck immediately by the way the space moved sound. A footstep echoes from 3 directions at once. Water sounds are magnified to something like music. A voice, when used, becomes something other than itself, richer, fuller, transformed. And underneath it all, always, there is that low hum, that rumble that doesn't quite belong to the wind or the stones or anything explicable by geology or physics as she understands them. It is this hum that has kept her coming back. It is this sound that she cannot find anywhere else in the world. She has spent half her life trying to explain it. She sets her equipment down in the center of the chamber, and for a moment, while there is still light filtering through the crevasse, she simply sits and observes. The walls curve upward in their mysterious geometry. There are places where water has worn channels through the stone, smooth grooves that seem to direct the sound in particular ways. There are stratifications in the rock, layers of different colors and compositions, telling a story of geological time that she can barely comprehend. Millions of years, hundreds of millions of years. The stone has been here so much longer than human beings have existed. The stone has been holding its voice longer than any of them have been alive. And in recent years, with each climb, Sable feels this weight of time more acutely. She feels the impermanence of her own life set against the permanence of this place. She feels, increasingly, that she is running out of time, that the mountain may only have so many nights left to speak to her, and she must listen carefully, must record carefully, must be present for every moment that remains to her. The light continues to fail. She arranges her equipment in the deepening shadows, guided now more by memory and the faint illumination of her headlamp than by sight. The primary microphone goes on a tripod in the center of the chamber, pointed upward at the ceiling where the stone curves in its mysterious architecture, a shape that might be entirely random or might spell out something in a language only the mountain understands. The second microphone, positioned on a low stand, points toward the rear wall, the deepest part of the chamber, where the lowest frequencies tend to accumulate. The hydrophone she places on the stone floor, in the channel where a small stream flows during wet season. It's autumn, so the flow is minimal, just a trickle really, just enough to keep the stone damp and slick. But water is present, and where there is water, there is the possibility of transmission, of sound traveling through mediums beyond air. The preamp sits between them, and the cables run like neural pathways through the darkness, connecting each microphone to the recording device, each input promising to capture, to document, to render permanent what is by nature ephemeral. Sound is the art of impermanence. It exists only in the moment of its creation. She checks the levels on all three microphones. Everything is ready. The system is clean. The batteries show full charge. This is the moment where her professional competence peaks. From here on, there is nothing to do but wait and listen. Nothing but the practice of her life's most important work. She has been preparing for this night for 34 years, and every moment before was only preparation. By full darkness, and the darkness becomes truly full, more complete than darkness can be anywhere in the world outside of caves and deep wells and the closed interior of mountains. Sable settles into her chair. It is a camping chair, the kind designed for backcountry use, compressed now from decades of use, but still functional. The metal frame has a slight rattle to it now, but she has learned to position her weight in a way that minimizes it. She wraps a thermal blanket around herself. The mountain is cold, not dangerously so, never cold enough to threaten hypothermia if she stays active and fed, but a deep, patient cold that comes from stone that never sees sun, that radiates away the day's warmth as soon as the source is removed. She puts on her headphones. The weight of them around her head is familiar, comfortable, a part of the ritual. The leather is worn now, shaped to the contours of her skull from 34 nights of use. She presses play on the recorder, and the red light begins to glow in the darkness, evidence that recording has begun, that whatever happens in this chamber tonight will be preserved, will be kept, will exist beyond the moment of its occurrence. The sound that comes through is the sound of waiting. It is the sound of air meeting stone, of the acoustic properties of an enclosed space creating their own particular resonance. There is the faint whisper of wind outside, transmitted through cracks and fissures in the rock, carrying the sounds of the night forest, the rustle of small creatures, bats perhaps, or insects, or the normal sounds of a wild place settling into darkness. And underneath it all, that low-frequency hum that Sable has never successfully recorded with any clarity, though she has tried with equipment ranging from consumer-grade recorders to instruments borrowed from university acoustics labs. The hum exists in her ears, in her body, in the way it seems to resonate through her chest cavity. But on playback, it is muffled, distant, transformed into something that doesn't quite match the visceral experience of being present in the chamber. This is the frustration of her life's work, the gap between experience and documentation. The mountain speaks to her in a language that cannot be transcribed, but she continues trying anyway, year after year, night after night. She sits in the darkness for hours, listening. This is what she does. She sits in the darkness and she listens, and she lets the mountains speak. Sometimes there are moments of activity, long stretches where the sounds shift and change, where the hum modulates, where something that might be meaning seems to surface. Sometimes there are long periods of near silence, where the only sounds are the sounds of stone relaxing slightly with the temperature drop, or wind finding new passages through the rock. And all of it, every moment, is recorded. All of it will be analysed later, in the ordinary world, in her small apartment in the city, with her spreadsheets of frequencies and her notebooks full of observations, and her slowly accumulating sense that she is missing something fundamental. Around midnight, something shifts. Sable feels it before she hears it. A change in the air pressure, a subtle deepening of the cold. Her temperature drops further, noticeably. She leans forward in her chair, still, waiting. Through the headphones, there is new sound. Not new, exactly. Different. The low hum has shifted frequencies, has deepened somehow, has taken on what sounds like. And here Sable has to consider whether this is real, or whether it's the late hour, the isolation, the decades of listening that have rewired her mind, made her susceptible to seeing patterns that don't exist, something like intention, purpose. The hum modulates, falling and rising in a pattern that almost sounds like language, like someone trying to speak over and over, a phrase that cannot quite find words. She reaches for her notebook, starts writing observations in the darkness, her handwriting becoming increasingly cramped and illegible. But she writes anyway. When the sound fades, she sits in silence. The rest of the night proceeds in the way these nights usually proceed. There are periods of activity, moments of deep quiet, sounds that might be interpreted as communication, or that might simply be the planet's own breathing. There is a point, around 3 a.m., when a pack of coyotes passes near the entrance, and their howls are transmuted by the chamber's acoustics into something haunting and otherworldly. There is a period of absolute silence, around 4:30 a.m., that lasts for what feels like an hour, but is really only 17 minutes. In that silence, Sable becomes aware of how small she is, how temporary, how insignificant against the vast age of stone. She documents it all, and slowly, as the hours of the night accumulate, a new exhaustion settles over her. It is not a physical exhaustion, though her body is tired, but something deeper. It is the exhaustion of someone who has spent a lifetime waiting for something, and who has begun, finally, to understand that the waiting itself might be the point, that she has been inside the story all along, not recording it but living it, becoming part of the mountain's narrative as much as the mountain is part of hers. She removes her headphones, The real silence of the chamber, the sound with her own ears, unmediated by technology, unrecorded, purely in the moment of experience, feels different than what comes through the microphones. It is softer, it is warmer, it is more alive. She sits without sound for a moment, letting the mountain exist in her unrecorded, unanalyzed, purely in the moment of experience. She has never allowed herself this before. She has always documented, always recorded, always mediated the experience through technology. But now, with the dawn approaching, with the night reaching its deepest point and beginning its turn toward light, she allows herself to simply be here. And in that moment of unmediated listening, she hears it. She hears it, and her breath catches, and her hands begin to tremble, and she knows immediately that this is why she has come back 34 times. This is why she will come back again. This is why she will return, year after year, as long as she is able to climb. It is not a sound that any microphone will capture. She knows this immediately, with the certainty of someone who has spent decades trying. It is not a frequency that any analysis can quantify, no waveform that will render it visible on a display. It is the sound of the mountain itself, not the physical vibrations of stone, but the mountain's voice as it exists in the space between matter and meaning. It emerges from the darkness, and it fills the chamber, and it fills her own chest cavity, and for a moment she is not separate from it, but part of it. It is deep and ancient and patient. It contains in its frequencies the memory of every rainfall that has seeped into its stone, every creature that has lived in its shadow, every moment of stillness and every moment of change. It is a sound of profound loneliness and profound belonging, all at once. It is the voice of something that has been waiting, in the deep dark, for someone to finally listen. And most crucially, most impossibly, it is a sound that is new. In all her years, in all her nights, in all 34 of her climbs to this place, she has never heard this particular configuration of frequencies. The mountain has produced something it has never produced before, some new harmonic, some fresh chord in its ancient song. She has heard the mountain speak many times, but she has never heard the mountain speak like this, as though it is answering something, as though it is responding to her presence, her attention, her decades of listening. Sable sits motionless, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to do anything but receive this sound. It washes through her like gravity, like time, like the slow knowledge of mortality. It does not feel like a language that needs decoding. It feels like a direct transmission, not of information, but of presence, of acknowledgement, of recognition. The mountain is speaking not to be understood, but to be heard, to be acknowledged as alive in the way that all deep things are alive, to be recognized as sentient in a way that transcends human categories. The sound continues for perhaps 2 minutes. It is impossible to say. Time doesn't move normally when something like this happens. Time becomes a medium rather than a measurement. It thickens. It expands. She might later check her watch and find that only 2 minutes have passed, or she might find that a quarter hour has gone by. In the moment, time ceases to be a reliable unit of measurement. When the sound fades, it fades, like dawn fades into daylight, gradually, with no clear moment of ending, until suddenly she is aware that she has returned to the ordinary sounds of the chamber, and the extraordinary communication has passed. She sits in the silence that follows, understanding that she will spend the rest of her life trying to explain something that cannot be explained. This moment of contact, this night of extraordinary listening, the moment when the boundary between the listener and the listened to dissolved, and for a brief instant there was no distinction between her consciousness and the mountain's voice. She reaches for her notebook with trembling hands and marks the moment. Not the exact time, her watch seems unimportant now, but the significance. She writes, and her handwriting is almost illegible with emotion about what she has just heard. She sits with the knowledge. She sits with the weight of this moment. And slowly, as the hours continue and the darkness begins its inexorable turn toward light, she becomes aware of something shifting inside her. The hunger that has driven her all these years. The hunger to understand, to document, to preserve and capture the mountain's voice. This hunger has been answered, not with understanding, but with recognition. The mountain has acknowledged her, has spoken to her directly, and in speaking has revealed that the listening was never about collecting data. It was always about presence, about being present year after year, until the mountain felt known enough to speak something new. She puts her headphones back on. The microphones are still recording. The red light on the recorder still glows in the darkness. She marks the moment in her logging, her hands shaking now. She writes in her notebook, more carefully this time, trying to capture something of what she has experienced, knowing that words will always fail her. She sits with the ongoing symphony of the mountain, with the ordinary sounds that continue after the extraordinary moment has passed. And she knows that she will spend months, perhaps years, analyzing the recordings from this night, finding nothing unusual on the visual readouts, seeing the frequencies that don't match her experience, puzzling over the gap between what technology captures and what consciousness experiences. But that is all still ahead. For now, she sits in the chamber as the light begins to return, as the world begins to wake, and she knows with absolute certainty that she will return. She will climb to this mountain again and again, as many times as it takes, because the conversation has begun. The mountain has spoken something new, something it has never said before, and a sound once heard cannot be unheard. A voice once recognized demands to be answered, demands to be sought out, demands a response that only presence can give, the presence of someone willing to climb, willing to wait, willing to listen in the darkness until the mountain speaks again. She sits with the dawn. She watches as the light comes into the chamber, a thin grey at first, then gradually warming to blue, then to the pale gold of approaching sunrise. The stone walls become visible, ancient and textured, worn smooth by wind and water, in patterns that might be entirely random, or might spell out stories that only the mountain understands. Stories older than human language. Stories that existed in stone before stone found its voice. Her equipment continues to record. The batteries will hold for another few hours. She will take the recordings with her, as always. She will spend months analyzing them, finding nothing unusual on the visual readouts, seeing the frequencies that don't match her experience. But she will also carry with her the knowledge of this moment, the memory of this night when the mountains spoke something new. And she knows with the certainty of someone who has just heard the deepest truth she has ever encountered, that she will return. The mountain will wait for her return, and Sable, finally, knows exactly why she must go back. The hollow mountain holds her as the sun rises, and in its ancient embrace, Sable finally understands. She came to record the mountain, but the mountain has been recording her all along. Every night of listening is a night of being listened to. Every year of waiting is a year of being waited for. And this morning, as the light fills the chamber and the distant calls of waking birds echo from the forest below, she holds inside her the weight of that exchange, the knowledge that some conversations happen in silence, in the space between heartbeats, in the frequencies where human language cannot reach. Some conversations are so profound that they cannot be spoken, can only be lived, can only be received as a gift given by stone to flesh, by the ancient world to the temporary being allowed for a moment to hear its voice. As Sable makes her way back down the mountain, she carries with her the profound understanding that this night has fundamentally changed the nature of her work. The recordings she has made will be analyzed and dissected, but they will never fully capture what occurred in those hours of darkness. The mountain's voice exists in a realm beyond the reach of technology, in a frequency that human consciousness alone can perceive. She understands now that she was never trying to record the mountain for the world. She was recording it for herself and for the mountain. She was creating a testimony to their conversation, a record that this exchange happened, that this moment existed in time. The descent is different from the ascent. Her legs are tired. Her body aches with the beautiful exhaustion of having been present for something transcendent. Yet with each step downward, she feels lighter, as though she has left behind some burden she has been carrying her entire life. The hunger that drove her, the desperate need to understand, to capture, to preserve, it has been transformed into something else entirely. It has become gratitude. It has become peace. It has become the simple knowledge that she has been heard, that her decades of listening have not gone unnoticed, that the mountain knew she was coming, and it prepared something new to say to her. By the time she reaches the parking area, the morning sun is fully arrived. The day is bright and ordinary and perfect in its mundanity. She sits in her car for a long time before starting the engine, simply breathing, simply being present in the aftermath of the night. She thinks about returning to her ordinary life, her apartment in the city, her job at the university, the quiet days of analysis and documentation. But she already knows that something has shifted. She will not be able to live as before. The mountain has changed her, and there is no going back to the person she was when she arrived. She starts the engine. She drives slowly down the mountain roads, taking her time, not rushing. She does not check her phone. She does not turn on the radio. She simply drives, and she remembers every moment of the night that has just passed. She commits it to her deepest memory, knowing that it is this memory, not the recordings, that is the true archive. This is what will sustain her until she can return. This knowledge that the conversation has begun. This certainty that the mountain will be waiting for her again. When she finally arrives home, 3 hours later, she unpacks her equipment with the care of someone handling sacred objects. She places the recorder on her desk. She connects it to her computer. She begins to download the files, and though she knows that the recordings will show only ordinary sounds, only the normal frequencies of wind and stone and the occasional rustling of nocturnal creatures. She will spend months studying them anyway, because that is part of the ritual now. That is part of the ongoing conversation between human being and stone. She plays back the recordings and hears the mountain as technology has captured it. And then she closes her eyes and remembers the mountain as her consciousness experienced it. And in that gap between the two experiences, she finds something like grace, something like the answer to a question she did not know how to ask, something like home. The hollow mountain will wait for her return, and Sable, with every fiber of her being, knows that she will return. She must return. The conversation is not finished. It has only just begun.